Hello, everyone. I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
And today we will be discussing Book 3, Chapter 11 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you.
Now, we will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion, so there will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the book, but knowing me and my big mouth, you know what? I'm still good. I'm not apologizing. I'm not going to apologize in advance. I'm done. We're good so far.
Yeah, you're on a streak of good behavior.
I know it. So I'm going to try and hold this streak, so I'm not going to apologize yet.
Yeah. Okay, good. A quick warning. Today's episode contains descriptions of gelid, febrile, and coruscating sorceress violence. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm sorry. Yes, shots fired on that when you lost me. Our show is listener supported, and if you'd like to support us, we would really appreciate that. So you can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Chapter 11, Part 1.
Yes.
The chapter begins with a passage. Quote, "If you seek the crumbled bones of the Talan I mass, gather into one hand the sands of Raraku." End quote. And that is from The Holy Desert by Anonymous. By Anonymous? Is that the right way you say that?
I think
How do you attribute Anonymous?
Yeah. That's a good question. How do you attribute Anonymous?
Okay.
You could pull the, have you ever seen And Then There Were None or read And Then There Were None?
No.
It's the idea that these people are summoned to an island by an unknown benefactor. And his name is Mr. U.N. Owen. Unknown.
Okay.
So this could be a U.N. Owen. The Holy Desert by U.N. Owen.
Yeah. Now, I found this passage interesting. We can assume that the Talan Mass have a heavy history on the continent of 7 cities. I would like to know more. Do their bones make up the sand due to battle? Is it because they had a civilization there? What exactly is being inferred here?
Well, that's kind of what I get. I get that impression from what is said that I'm like you. Are they so thoroughly in the land that even if you pick up any dust, you're picking up some bones, some Talan Mass are in there? But is this also just something that could be a 7-city saying? You know, like I'll bring up the Bible, for example. There's some sayings in there we can't wrap our heads around because they're colloquialisms. You know, something about vinegar setting your teeth on edge. It's a saying to the people in the time, but it doesn't mean anything to us. I think it's what we would call make your skin crawl. I think maybe like an equivalent. So I'm just kind of curious if maybe this is some kind of like localized saying.
Interesting.
But the other thing I've got is if you live in 7 cities, which one of the cities gets to call itself the city?
Oh, boy. I mean, you might start a tribal war just trying to establish that.
I know it. That might be the way that you can get them fellas to turn on each other. What if the bridge burners just walked around and said, "Are you going to call yourself the city?" That other city's calling itself the city.
Yeah.
I'm a 7 and that cannot stand. It's like,
well, okay. So we can have a little fun with this. Egatan, we know that there's been a fire there. So you could say that, the Great Chicago Fire. So like they're the Chicago, the Midwest, if you will. I mean,
that's very true.
You got some East Coast cities. Erin is kind of on the southeast. That'd be more like a Miami if we're talking about the equivalent. So where do we start out? Erlatan. Would Erlatan count?
I don't know
which city had the Gen Rob.
There you go. That's the city.
That was Erlatan, right?
Yes, I think it is Erlatan.
Yeah, maybe Erlatan.
Okay, they're the city. Erlatan is the city.
The city?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
If it doesn't know what we're talking about, we're making fun of the fact that people around New York City call it the city. So,
yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, that harkens back to our boys' excruciating details episodes there.
Yeah. The chapter begins on the Silanda. Within the warren of Mianus, Culp felt like a rat trapped in a room of ogres, caged in by shadows and about to be crushed underfoot. Never before when entering the warren had it felt so fraught. He felt intruders within the warren. The essence of himself that had slipped through the fabric was reduced to a crouching, cowering creature. And yet all he could feel were the spun wakes that marked the paths the unwelcome had taken. For the moment he was alone. Still, he trembled with terror. Within his mind, he reached back a ghostly hand and found the place where his body existed. He sat cross-legged in the captain's cabin of the Solanda, watched over by Hebrick, while the others waited on the deck, ever scanning the unbroken flat horizon on all sides. They needed a way out. The entire Elder Warren they'd found themselves in was flooded, a soupy, shallow sea. The oarsmen could propel Solanda onward for 1,000 years, until the ship began to disintegrate around them. Still the drum would beat, and the backs would bend. Culp thought, and we'd be long dead by then. Nothing but moldering dust.
Real quick, moldering is another good Erikson one. You don't see moldering too often, but he uses it quite a bit, I think.
I don't recall if we've seen too much of it yet.
It'll always have to do with sea, when they get on the seas, because things get rotten.
Okay.
I always kind of put it together with that, because I think it'd be all kind of nastiness, and it gets, well, you know how it is on the sea. It's awful humid.
It is. To escape, the group needed to find a means of shifting warrens. Culp cursed his own limitations. Had he been a practitioner of virtually any of the other warrens accessible to humans, he would find what they needed. He thought, but not Mianus. No seas, no rivers, not even a hood-damned puddle. From within his warren, Culp was seeking to find a passage through to the mortal world, and it was proving problematic. Mages were bound by peculiar laws, by rules of nature that seemed to play games with the principles of cause and effect. Had they been riding a wagon, the passage through the warrens would have taken them on a dry path. The primordial elements asserted a consistency across all warrens. Land to land, air to air, water to water. Culp had heard of high mages who had found ways to cheat those laws, and perhaps the gods and other ascendants possessed such knowledge as well. But they were beyond his skills as a lowly Kadra mage. And that's some pretty interesting information dropped about how warrens behave. It's good to have some limitations on the magic system, otherwise you could simply snap your fingers to solve everything.
Agreed. That's part of the reason why I enjoy his so much, is you'll see it is such a give and take with their magic systems that it's almost like we would rather think any other thing we can do first before we have to break out the magic, because it may cost us something we can't afford to pay. That's a good way of looking at it. So,
yeah, and on that point, I've heard some people criticize this series, saying that it doesn't make sense. There's all this powerful magic. A lot of the problems that are significant can just be solved by some mage casting a spell. If you think about it in terms of the limitations that are placed on mages, especially if you've played any type of role-playing game, it's a similar thing where, like in Warhammer, for example, there are severe consequences for casting any of the spells from the warp. Like, in one of our games that I was DMing, one of my friends cast a spell and this bloodthirster demon showed up and should have killed the entire party. And now I didn't want to demoralize them that much.
right.
So like I kind of fudged it a little bit, but realistically they were all going to die because this is like some high level thing, you know? And then going to Dungeons and Dragons, you can only cast so many spells a day before you're exhausted and you have to rest. Similar principle.
Very similar principle, because the magic users themselves are limited by their own strengths and their own constitution and everything like that. But I also like that Erikson's magic users are thinkers. Like you just said, they can't just wave the magic wand and voila, everything is suddenly better. You have to think about it first so you can get the proper magic ready. But there's, I think it's what makes it so interesting, is the fact he considers himself a lowly Kadra mage, and he's pretty powerful in my opinion. But then again, there's these ascendants that make him look like nothing, I'm assuming, is how strong the ascendant is compared to the Kadra mage.
Yeah, I would agree, given when we get a little bit later here, how he describes what he encounters, the power levels, you kind of get that feeling.
Yeah. But I like that they have to really think their way out of it. And it's not just I can just make everything better. It's like, well, there's other people. It's like there's other sharks in that sea of magic users. And I think it's almost like it may bring them to notice of other magic users. I'm curious if that's part of his world as well.
Yeah, they can smell it out. And then you have those convergences. Power
that's true.
Summons other power sometimes.
Yes, it does. So his magic world is so much more interesting, so much more layered, as is everything in his world. It's just layered in such weird ways that it's not, we're just going to come in and white cap it and save the day at the 12th hour. with a wave of my wand. It's like, well, I can wave my wand and something good may happen, but usually somebody dies in Erikson's world, even if somebody's saved. So
It always feels like there's a toll for the
yes,
spell that's being cast. None of them are just frivolous.
I like that about his stuff too because of the toll.
Culp's other concern was the vastness of the task itself. Pulling a handful of companions through his warren was difficult, but manageable. But an entire ship? He'd hoped he would find inspiration once within the Mienus warren, some thunderbolt delivering a simple, elegant solution. He thought, with all the grace of poetry, was it not Fisher Keltath himself who once said poetry and sorcery were the twin edges to the knife in every man's heart? Where then are my magic cants? That name, Fisher Keltath, that will pop up quite a bit in the forwards to a chapter by Erikson because he has the poetry or excerpts from some passage in there.
I was going to say, I think we can honestly say this without spoiling anything. He is a bard.
Yes, he is a bard. Culp sourly admitted that he felt as stupid within Mienus as he did sitting in the captain's cabin. He thought, the art of illusion is grace itself. There must be a way to trick our way through. What's real versus what isn't is the synergy within a mortal's mind. And greater forces, can reality itself be fooled into asserting an unreality? And that would be interesting, fooling reality with an illusion and getting away with it.
Yeah. And this kind of goes to something we've talked about just a minute ago. It's like the magic user has to work out the solution here because he will be exhausted and it's going to hurt him doing something this big.
Sometimes they don't anticipate what they're getting themselves into.
I think that's a great thing too, that Erikson shows. Is like, I like that he shows these fellows getting in over their head. Trying to use magic. Whoa.
Yeah, you're playing with dangerous stuff.
Yes, you are. And it can flip on you.
It's like these people that are pouring gas out of a gas can on a campfire.
Yes.
And then the fire comes back up. It gets into the can.
That's exactly what it's like. Yeah. Yeah, it's a harsh magic using world here. You notice that in all the stuff that we've seen from the Ascendants, and like in Gardens, even they're not really quick to break out the magic. Right. It's like, let's see if we can deal with this first before we have. It's like magic is almost like a last ditch. Like it can get it solved and it might do it effectively, but it could be like we said, it could cost. So they don't tend to. It's like even the Ascendants seem to be like, in my opinion, seem to be folks that almost wait until you don't have an option to use magic.
Yeah, in their case, I think it's related to putting themselves in danger from more powerful Ascendants. So what comes to mind is Opan debating whether or not they should get involved in some situations in Gardens of the Moon because they're worried about getting attention from Hood or whatever other deity. Rake, they don't want to piss Rake off.
No one wants to piss Rake off, buddy.
Culp sensed he was no longer alone. Something huge approached, pushing the air before it. And whatever it was coming fast. A sudden thought flooded Culp's mind, and moreover, it possessed elegance. He thought, Tog's toes, can I do this? Building pressure, then vacuous wake, a certain current, a certain flow. Hood, it ain't water, but close enough, I hope. Culp saw Hebrick jump back in alarm, striking his head on a low crossbeam in the cabin. Culp slipped back into his body and loosed a rasping gasp. He said, we're about to go, Hebrick. Get everyone ready. Hebrick rubbed the stump on the back of his head and asked, ready for what, mage? Culp said anything. Culp slid back out to his anchor within Mienus. The unwelcome was coming, a force of such power as to make the febrile atmosphere shiver. Culp felt outrage building in the air, in the earth underfoot. Whatever passed through this warren had drawn the attention of Shadow Throne, the Hounds, or perhaps warrens truly are alive. In any case, on it came, in arrogant disregard. Febrile, that's another word added to my vocabulary by Mr. Erikson through these books.
Yes, along with turgid and torpid, and of course the ever-present coruscation.
Culp suddenly thought back to Sormo's ritual that had drawn them into the Talan Imas warren outside Hisar. He thought, oh Hood, soul-taken or divers. But such power, who in the abyss has such power? He could think of but two, Animander Rake, the son of darkness, and Osric. Both soul-taken, both supremely arrogant. If there were others, the tales of their activities would have reached him, he was certain. He thought, Warriors talk about heroes. Mages talk about ascendants. Culp would have heard.
Mhm.
Rake was on Genebacus, and Osric was reputed to have journeyed to a continent far to the south a century or so back. Culp thought, well, maybe the cold-eyed bastard's back. And we've heard mention of Osric before in a conversation. It was when Rake was talking to Baruch in his study. He mentioned offhand that he had met with Icarium 800 years ago, and Osric
Yes.
was there. He might have referred to him as Osric, same person.
Yes.
They got into a fight about something. That's about all we know about Osric at this point.
Yeah. He's apparently a cantankerous fella, or cantankerous ascendant, we'll say.
Well, a lot of these ascendants, they've known each other for a long time. And like any friendship or relationship, there's going to be times you piss each other off. Nothing is always perfect. You're going to annoy each other, and you stretch that out over hundreds of thousands of years. I'm sure there's going to be a number of those episodes.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them, I'm sure.
Either way, Culp was about to find out who this was. The presence arrived. His spiritual belly flat on the soft ground, Culp craned his head skyward. The dragon came low to the earth. It defied every image of a draconian being Culp had ever seen. Not Rake, not Osric. Hugely boned, with skin like dry shark hide. Its wingspan dwarfed even that of the Son of Darkness, who has within him the blood of the draconian goddess. And the wings had nothing of the smooth, curving grace. The bones were multi-jointed in a crazed pattern, like that of a crushed batwing, each knobbed joint prominent beneath taut, cracked skin. The dragon's head was as wide as it was long, like a viper's, the eyes high on its skull. There was no ridged forehead. Instead, the skull sloped back to a basal serration almost buried in neck and jaw muscles. A dragon roughly cast, a creature exhaling an aura of primordial antiquity, and Culp realized with a breathless start that it was undead. That's a cool visual of a dragon. I like to see different variations of them.
Yes, I do too.
And also, while we're talking about dragons, did you ever watch the D&D movie?
I did not. I think I kind of talked with you a little bit about it, and I heard some people just bashing it before it's even out. I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch that. So I kind of steered away from it.
It was entertaining, actually.
Okay, well, that's good.
If you like D&D, you'll appreciate some of the shenanigans that go on in there. From my perspective, when the druid turned into an owlbear, I lost it because I've mentioned before I had a pet owlbear on my mage. But the reason I'm bringing the movie up right now is they go to this dragon's lair, and it's this obese dragon named Thember Chod. It is so funny. It's like blubbering all over the place. It's got like neck rolls. It was beautiful. I was dying laughing the whole time. Like, it reminded me of my cat that was a little bit overweight.
Right.
When he's trying to like make a jump and it doesn't make it quite all the way and he falls.
Oh my good gracious, that is too funny. One of the things I love so much of Erikson's stuff, the dragons, the idea of an undead dragon. I don't know why that's even more horrifying than just the regular dragon to me. Are they going to make zombie dragons? Or what are they going to do?
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if this is Talani Mass.
Oh, that would almost have to be who it was, wouldn't it? Is it Talani Mass? There's not many undead that aren't Talan.
Judging by what Warren it goes to, I'm thinking it might be.
Good call. Nice.
I don't know if we ever get any answer on who this is.
Yeah, it's just kind of passing through.
Yeah, just, hey, I'm going to do what I want. I'm just going to come into Shadow Realm.
Say something. Say something. Whatever. I go where I want.
Culp felt the dragon become aware of him as it sailed in a whisper 20 arm spans overhead. The attention quickly passed into indifference. As the dragon's wake arrived with a piercing wind, Culp rolled onto his back and hissed the few words of high meanness he possessed. The warren's fabric parted, a tear barely large enough to allow the passage of a horse, but it opened onto a vacuum, and the shrieking wind became a roar. Still hovering between realms, Culp watched in awe as Solanda's mud-crusted, battered prow filled the rent. The fabric split wider, then yet wider. Suddenly the ship's beams seemed appallingly broad. The mage's awe turned to fear, then terror. He thought, oh no, I've really done it now. To the point about getting in over your head.
Yeah. Let me just rip a hole in existence here. Whoa, this may not be a good idea. Too late now.
Milky, foaming water gushed in around the ship's hull. The portalway was tearing wider on all sides, uncontrolled, as the weight of the sea began to rush through. You cannot underestimate the force of water.
Mm-mm.
It's like those people trying to drive perpendicular to a strong current in a stream or a river and their car gets swept away.
Yeah. And water don't play, man.
No.
You just think about how heavy it is alone, then having it rushing at you. I'm assuming millions of thousands of tens of thousands of tons of water pouring through that rent. It's trying to get out, man.
Yeah, a sea.
Yeah. A sea.
The weight of a sea behind it.
Yeah, that's a lot.
A wall of water descended on Culp. When it struck, it destroyed his anchor to Mianus. He was back in the pitching, groaning captain's cabin. Hebrick was half in and half out of the cabin doorway, scrambling to find purchase as Salanda rode the wave. Hebrick shot Culp a glare when he saw the mage clamber upright. He shouted, "Tell me you planned this. Tell me you got it all under control, mage." Culp shouted, "Of course, you idiot. Can't you tell?" He climbed his way around the bolted-down furniture to the passage and stepped over Hebrick as he went. He said, "Hold the fort, old man. We're counting on you." Hebrick snarled a few choice words after him as Culp made his way to the main deck. If the dragon's passage was to be bitterly tolerated and not directly opposed by the powers within Mianus, the rending of the warren obliterated the option of restraint. This was damage on a cosmic scale, a wounding quite possibly beyond repair. The way Culp banters with people, his sarcasm is really great. Have we encountered anybody else like him that's always having those sassy negative waves? And it's not like Phil Listen where it's nastiness, it's just kind of sarcastic. He's pessimistic.
I think we have, but he's not been that way yet. We've met Hedge in Gardens. Isn't that kind of like Hedge? Isn't Hedge kind of the sourpuss of the bunch?
I looked at Hedge as an eternal optimist.
Well, that's true. He kind of is.
Are you thinking of?
Maybe I am thinking of. That may be who I'm thinking about. I can't think of anyone like this in particular that is as lippy. Ben is close, but Ben is more kind. He's really grown on me.
So long story short, we can't really think of anybody that is quite like Culp.
Yeah, he's very Culpian. There's only one Culp.
Is that a new Horse Frog Dictionary term?
Culpian. Yeah, I guess so. Like Culp.
That's great, dude. Culp thought, "I may just have destroyed my own warren. If reality can't be fooled. Of course it can be fooled. I do it all the time." Culp scrambled onto the main deck and hurried to the stern castle. Gessler and Stormy were at the steering oar. Both men grinned like demented fools as they struggled to stay the course. Gessler pointed forward and Culp turned to see the ghost-like apparition of the dragon, its bony tail waving in side-to-side rhythm like a snake crossing sand. As he watched, the creature's wedge-shaped head appeared as it twisted to cast its dead black eye sockets in their direction. Gessler waved. Of course he would.
At least he didn't give him the finger, because if anyone in this world would do it, it would be Stormy or Gessler. One of those guys would definitely give an undead dragon the finger.
These guys are just crazy, man.
I love how it constantly refers to their crazed smiles as they're like, whatever they're doing, they always have that crazed smile going on. It's like these guys are out of their minds.
They're trying to outman each other. No one wants to give up first on the oar.
Yes. Oh, I love those two. They were so funny.
Unflappable.
Yeah.
Gessler is at least. Stormy got a little flapped when they saw those heads on the deck.
He had every reason to be flapped because he also had to confront the Talana Mass who gave him a sword. But I love all that talk about sending him underneath with all the headless corpses that are manning the oars. That would have been funny. I'm sorry.
Oh, to drum for them?
Yes.
Culp forced his way into the wind and walked to the stern rail, which he gripped with both hands. The rent was already far away, he thought, yet still visible, meaning it must be, hood. Water gushed in a tumbling torrent within the wake left by the soul-taken dragon. That it did not spread out to all sides was due entirely to the massive shadows Culp saw assailing its edges and being destroyed in the effort. Yet still more arrived. The task of healing the breach was so overwhelming as to deny any opportunity of approaching the rent, of sealing the wound itself. That would look really cool with the shadows coming in to try to stem the tide of that water.
Yeah, I agree. That would be really cool looking because it paints a real vivid picture in my head.
Yeah, I don't remember that from my prior read-throughs of the shadows doing the work there.
No, me neither. I think what we're about to see is about the only thing I think about. I overlooked that phrase. It's just one little line. It's easy to overlook.
We've had quite a few of those where we're like, wow, that's just one sentence that kind of changes the visual
It
imagery of the whole
visual
scene, doesn't
big
it?
time. Yeah, that's what I've enjoyed about going through this book like this. It's like, wow, I thought the book was great before, but man, it's a lot better than I remember.
If Mr. Erikson ever listens to this, he'd be like, it's right there. Aren't you reading what I'm writing? It's been there the whole time.
It's because I'm always trying to get to the next book so I can finish it and start again.
It's an action sequence. I'm reading at a speed which is
commiserate.
I'm excited. I want to see what's going to happen.
Exactly.
I'm not analyzing each paragraph.
No, once the action hits, dude, which he has so much action in every chapter, dude. It's like his action is so good. Yeah, I miss some small descriptors that are not small descriptors. They're small in size, but they're huge descriptions. Couched in about 4 or 5 words.
Right. Culp thought, Shadow Throne, and every other hoary ascendant bastard within hearing. Maybe I've got no faith in any of you, but you'd better acquire a faith in me. And fast. Illusion's my gift, here and now. Believe! Eyes on the rent, Culp braced his legs wide, then released the stern rail and raised high both arms. Culp thought, it shall close, it shall heal. The scene before him wavered, the tear sealing, stitching together the edges. The water slowed. He pushed harder, willing the illusion to become real. His limbs shook. Sweat sprang out on his skin, soaked his clothing. Reality pushed back. The illusion blurred. Culp's knees buckled. He gripped the railing to keep himself upright. He was failing. He thought, no strength left. Failing. Dying. The force that struck him from behind was like a physical blow to the back of his head. Stars filled his vision. An alien power swept through him, flinging his body back upright, spread-eagled. He felt his feet leave the tilted deck. The power held him, hovering in place, a will as cold as ice flooding his flesh. The power was undead. The will that gripped him was a dragon's. Tinged with irritation, reluctant to act, it nevertheless grasped the illogic of Culp's sorcerous effort and gave it all the force it needed, then more. He screamed as pain lanced through him with glacial fire. Undead cared nothing for the limits of mortal flesh, a lesson now burning in his bones. The distant rent closed. All at once, other powers channeled through Culp. Ascendants, grasping Culp's outrageous intent, swept in to join the game with dark glee. He thought always a game. Damn you bastards, one and all. I take back my prayers. Hear me? Who'd take you all? Gotta be careful what you ask for.
Absolutely. And this is what I had alluded to earlier. Is like, this is where I'm really starting to really fall for Culp. He's funny, and he's also quite smart and very strangely powerful. As we see a hole in reality. Yeah, very creative, which is what you got to be a Mianus practitioner.
And he definitely bit off more than he could chew here. So having all that power channeled through him, that's one of those examples of when you ask for something like this and you're trying to deal with these massive powers, the bodies just can't handle it in many cases.
Can't handle it. You just can't handle it. And this also goes back to what we talked about, the magic use. You just can't wave a magic wand because it may burn out the vessel. Mm-hmm. That's hinted at in Gardens of the Moon. Talking about crack that door open, let it in. You let too much in, it'll burn you up.
That's what happened to that mage with the lightning storm.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to that fella.
Culp realized the pain was gone. The soul-taken dragon had withdrawn its attention as soon as other forces arrived to take its place. He remained hovering a few feet above the deck, however. His limbs twitched as the powers using him playfully plucked at his mortality. Not the indifference of an undead, but malice. Culp began to yearn for the former. He fell suddenly, cracking both knees on the dirt-smeared deck. He thought, tool done with, now discarded. Stormy was at his side, waving a wineskin before his face. Culp grasped it and poured until his mouth was full of the tart liquid. Stormy said, we ride the dragon's wake, though not on water anymore. That gush has closed up tight as a sapper's arse. Whatever you did, mage, it worked. Culp muttered, not over yet, as he tried to still his trembling limbs. He swallowed more wine. Stormy grinned and said, watch yourself with that, then. It packs a punch, right to the back of the head. Culp said, I won't notice the difference. My skull's already full of pulp.
Do you have any actors in your head for Stormy and Gessler?
Yeah, there's only one person that I can think of that would play Stormy.
Okay.
He was in Game of Thrones. He was the wildling redhead guy.
Okay.
His name is Christopher Hivju. He's a Norwegian actor.
Okay.
He's got huge red beard, long red hair. I've always pictured Stormy as this guy.
Okay.
Because he's huge, just like Stormy. Redhead, Stormy's Filari.
Yes.
It would be the perfect casting from my perspective.
Okay.
How about you?
I don't have anybody in particular. I was just curious because sometimes you've asked me these questions. I'm like, I'm just curious who you would think of to play those guys. I don't really have anyone in mind. Christopher Walken has to be someone in this show. I don't know who he would be.
Christopher Walken would have to be. Here's the problem. For me, he would be a perfect Shadow Throne or Pust, but they're not white.
Right.
They're Dalhoneys. Dalhoneys are dark skinned. So,
Yes.
I'm real big on trying to keep
Yes.
the actors looking exactly. But I mean, just based on the behavior, I would think like Christopher Walken would be an amazing Shadow Throne.
Would be
The
great.
perfect amount of madness.
Yes. I agree. He'd be great as Shadow Throne. I agree. Make it so. Make it so.
Yeah, make it so. I don't know who I would pick for Gessler, though, because he's a bald guy, shaved head, a little bit Asianish. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of get Yul Brynner when he was in The King and I. I guess he could kind of look like him a little bit.
Sure. He was always bald. Sorry, Yul's just shaved bald, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Gessler shaved his head,
that's
too.
true. But I'm thinking of, because he'd be great because I think of, have you ever seen the original Westworld?
No, not the original one.
The original one, Yul plays the gunslinger. He is the inspiration for Terminator. He's a non-speaking, he does speak here and there, but it's like one or two lines, and it's always hands on hips as he's walking with his hands by his guns. He's ready to kill anyone, anytime, anywhere. When you know that about Terminator, you can totally see how this is an influence for him. But yeah, I think Yul would be great. Someone like him. Even though Yul's long dead, but hey.
Yeah. I don't know of any current...
Hey, I don't know the actors. I'm so far behind my times on actors.
There's one guy, I don't know if he's robustly boned enough, but he was in John Wick 3.
Uh-huh.
He was also, oddly enough, the host of the American Iron Chef show.
Huh. Okay.
Have you seen Brotherhood of the Wolf?
Long time ago, but yes.
He was the Native American companion to the French guy in that.
Okay.
He's been shaving his head for a long time, though. He could maybe play Gessler.
There we go. Okay.
Stormy said, "You lit up with blue fire, mage. Never seen anything like it. Make a damned good tavern tale." Culp said, "I've achieved immortality at last. Take that, Hood." Stormy asked, "Well enough to stand?" Culp was not too proud to accept Stormy's arm as he tottered to his feet. He said, "Give me a few moments, then I'll try to slip us from the warren, back to our realm." Stormy asked, "Will the ride be as rough, mage?" Culp said, "I hope not." Felicin stood on the forecastle deck as she watched Culp and Stormy pass the wineskin between them. She had felt the presence of the Ascendants, the cold, bloodless attention plucking and prodding at the ship and all who were upon it. The dragon was the worst of them all, gelid and remote. She thought, like fleas on its hide, that's all we were to it. She turned to see Bodden as he studied the massive dragon ahead. Whatever they rode rolled beneath them in a whispering surge. Felicin thought, look at us, a handful of destinies. We command nothing, not even our next step in this mad, fraught journey. The mage has his sorcery, the old soldier his stone sword, and the other two their faith in the tusked god, Hebrick. Hebrick has nothing. And as for me, I have pox and scars. So much for our possessions. Bodden said, the beast prepares. She glanced over at Bodden and thought, oh yes, I forgot the thug. He has his secrets, for what that's worth. Like as not, scant little. Felicin asked, prepares what? Are you an expert in dragons as well? I was not prepared for Felicin in this chapter. The opening salvo has been fired.
Yes, agreed. And every interaction with her always costs something, like my caring what happens to her. I care less and less what happens to her. It's like, please just get rid of her. Tired of this. It's Dante and Clerks. I'm not even supposed to be here today, man. Always, I'm not supposed to be here.
Now that you're bringing up Clerks, that reminds me of that guy, whatever his name was, Sing Berserker. And he's like, Berserker, you know.
My love for you is like a truck. Berserker. I'm not going to finish that. It's, oh my gosh, it's like, Olaf, do Berserker. Olaf, do Berserker. That's what it is. It's Olaf.
That's great. Do you know all the lyrics?
I just know that. Would you like to make some? It's the truck is the F. It's like
yeah.
Would you
yeah.
Did he
I got
say
you.
making? Yeah, he's like Russian. They don't speak English like we do. It's like that's what Jay said. Oh goodness.
Bodden replied, "Something's opening ahead. There's a change in the sky. See it?" Felicin did. The unrelieved gray pall had acquired a stain ahead. A smudge of brass that deepened, grew larger. She thought, "A word to the mage, I think." But even as she turned, the stain blossomed and filled half the sky. From somewhere far behind them came a howl of curdled outrage. Shadows sped across their path, tumbled to the sides as Solando's prow clove through them. The dragon crooked its wings, then vanished into a blazing inferno of bronze fire. This is what made me think that it might be a Talani mass soul taken, because it's going into a warren of fire.
That's true.
Now, to be fair, it is also in the Shadow Realm right now, so it could be, hey, it can go wherever it wants.
That's true.
Bodden spun, then wrapped Felicin in his huge arms and ducked down around her as the fire swept over the ship. She heard his hiss as the flames engulfed them. Felicin thought, the dragons found a warren to sear the fleas from its hide. She flinched as the flames licked around Bodden's protective mass. She could smell him burning, the leather shirt, the skin of his back, his hair. Her gasps drew agony into her lungs. Then Bodden ran. He carried her effortlessly in his arms and leapt down to the main deck. Voices shouted. Felicin caught a glimpse of Hebrick, his tattoos wreathed in black smoke, as he staggered, then struck the port rail and plummeted over the side of the ship. It's amazing to me that Bodden's first instinct is still to protect her after all that she said and done to him.
I know it. And he just gets no respect. I just can't do Dangerfield. I wish I could. I just get no respect. Bodden gets no respect from her. Even this is not the first time he has shielded her either.
That's like the third time somebody's protected her. I guess one time it was Hebrick, but I know for a fact Bodden did it one time.
Yes, he did. And she's still just graceless. Can't even be thankful for being saved.
Solanda burned. Bodden plunged past the mainmast at a run. Culp lunged into view and grasped Bodden's arms as he tried to scream something the roaring fires swept away. But Bodden had become a thing mindless in its pain. His arm flung outward, and Culp was hurled back through the flames. Bodden bellowed as he lurched on, a blind, hopeless flight to the stern castle. The Marines had vanished. Felicin did not struggle. Seeing that no escape was possible, she almost welcomed the bites of fire that now came with increasing frequency. She watched as Bodden carried her over the stern rail. They fell. The breath was knocked from her lungs as they struck hard-packed sand, still clutched in an embrace. They rolled down a steep slope and came to rest amidst a pile of water-smoothed cobbles. The bronze fire was gone. Dust settled around them as Felicin stared up at bright sunlight. Somewhere near her head, flies buzzed. She thought, we've returned home. She knew it with instinctive certainty. Bodden groaned. Slowly he pushed himself away. She looked at him. The hair was gone from his head, leaving a flash-burned pate the color of mottled bronze. His leather shirt was nothing but stitched strips hanging down his broad back like fragments of charred webbing. If anything, the skin of his back was darker and more mottled than that of his head. The bandages on his hand were gone, revealing swollen fingers and bruised joints. Incredibly, his skin was not cracked, not split open. Instead, he had the appearance of having been gilded or tempered. Bodden rose slowly, each move aching with precision. She saw him blink, draw a deep breath. His eyes widened as he looked down at himself. Felicin thought, not what you were expecting. The pain fades. I see it in your face, now only a memory. You've survived, but somehow it all feels different. It feels. You feel. Can nothing kill you, Bodden? He glanced at her, then frowned. She said, we're alive. They both clambered upright. They stood in a narrow arroyo. The cut was less than 5 paces wide, the size twice the height of a man and banded in variously colored layers of sand. The heat was fierce. Sweat ran in runnels down her back. That sounds like working in the attic during the summer.
Oh, yeah. Or just hanging outside anywhere in Texas in the summer.
Yeah, it's hot outside.
It is, but the attic is in particular.
My experience when going into the attic, you start sweating within 10 seconds.
Yes, it's a next level.
Yeah, it's so stuffy and humid. It's an oven.
Yeah, it's an order of magnitude greater than outside. Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for your teaching me that, by the way.
An order of magnitude?
Yes, orders of magnitude.
Okay.
Yeah, you did. Yes, you did.
You're welcome.
That's a good one to use. Okay. I like that one.
Cool. She asked, can you see anywhere we can climb out? Bodden muttered, "Can you smell Ototaro?" A chill wrapped her bones. She thought, "We're back on the island." Then she said, "No, can you?" He shook his head and said, "Can't smell a damn thing, just a thought." She snapped, "Not a nice one. Let's find a way out." She thought, "You expect me to thank you for saving my life, don't you? You're waiting for even a single word, or maybe something as small as a look, a meeting of the eyes. You can wait forever, thug." Ungrateful.
Mm-hmm.
Just nasty. Nothing more to add.
Now, a question. Does Felicin actually add something to the story other than making me dislike her so much, or is she here to serve as some type of viewpoint? I know that she's a victim, and that I do have some sympathy for her as a victim, but it's like after constantly being saved time after time after time after time by this people around her, nothing ever cracks through this woman, and she, or young girl, I should say, and she doesn't ever come to a gracious point in her life that I'm aware of.
That's a difficult one for me to answer. We can't really talk about storylines or anything.
That's true. Let me ask you this: do you think the main takeaway from this is that it's just showing us all how fate is taking all of House Perrin and making these three kind of like the microcosm of what's all going on, all these continents fighting amongst each other? Same thing as the siblings kind of fighting with each other.
That's an interesting thing. Yeah.
I just came up with that now. Well, it's talking.
You went into your warren and you had a spark of genius.
Well, it's talk. But this is what I love. Agreed. But this is, you are my warren, sir. It's like it's working with you on this stuff. It makes us think like this, and that's part of what I enjoy about reading this with you, is seeing this and making me think on this like that. So I think maybe I answered my own question there. So
I think it's a combination of things. So Mr. Erikson's background as a counselor.
Oh, I didn't know he was a counselor.
I think this character lets him relay how someone that goes through something like that would potentially respond. And sometimes it's not like she has a counselor to talk to, right. And there's a lot of anger there, and all she can do is lash out. So as annoying as she is, I kind of get it.
I do too. I get it. I understand the necessity of it, but man, it's enough already. I'm like the Monty Python with, get on with it. Just get on with it.
Yeah, because I think the particular issue I have is I like Heberick, and I don't particularly mind Bodden. No. I don't know that I like him. He has some really interesting skills.
Yes.
We haven't learned enough about him. He's an enigma.
He if I'm not mistaken, he remains that way.
Yeah.
And so I want to like him because I think the reason I like him is because he's putting up with this girl trying to save her, even though she wants nothing to do with it. I forget that I have to take into account is not much time has actually passed. I kind of forget this because we talk about it week to week to week. And so I feel like we've been talking about it for a long time. But in all honesty, what this has been a couple days, maybe, since they got off the island?
Hard to say.
Yeah.
Because
warren travel is unusual.
The timelines, I'm having trouble reconciling the timelines, given Duiker was writing for how many months?
Oh my word, that's right. It's been months.
But I mean, you're right. It was like at most 11 days that they walked through the desert to get to the coast. Now, time can be weird in another warren. Yeah. So maybe when they were in the flooded warren, Kurald Imrulan, we don't know how fast time's going.
That's true.
So maybe that's how everything gets reconciled.
That could be, maybe because like time's moving different. What's in there for a couple of hours was a couple of months, maybe on there when they come back out to the universe of the Malazan, where the Malazan world is. Woo, as everyone calls it, woo. Have you seen that, the woo? I always think of Mr. Woo Woo. I'm from Seinfeldism. Sorry.
I was thinking, is the Big Lebowski? Doesn't he say something about woo?
Yes, Woo was the Asian American that micturated on his rug.
Yes.
Another term we don't get to use too often unless we're quoting things is micturation.
Micturating. All right, we need to move along here.
Oh, goodness.
They worked their way along the choked channel, surrounded by a whining cloud of flies and their own echoes. After they walked for some time, Bodden said, "I'm heavier." Felicin paused, glanced back at him, and asked, "What?" Bodden shrugged and repeated, heavier. He kneaded his own arm with his uninjured hand. He said, more solid. I don't know. Something's changed. She thought something's changed. She stared at him, the emotions within her twisting around unvoiced fears. His frown deepened as he said, I could have sworn I was burning away to bones. Felicin said, I haven't changed, and turned to continue on.
No, you haven't.
She heard him follow a moment later. I don't know if she said it with that tone. I'm just going to imagine she said it like
I heard it that when I read it, I heard it like that. So
if I'm misrepresenting this character, please let me know.
yes.
Someone.
Yes. If she actually has some redemptive qualities, we would really like to hear about it because it's killing us talking about this gal every week. So please let us know at contact@horsefrogproductions.com, please.
Thank you. They found a side channel. This track quickly lost its depth, opening out after 20 or so paces. They emerged onto the edge of a range of blunt hills overlooking a broad valley of cracked earth. More hills, sharper and ragged, rose on the other side, blurry behind waves of heat. 500 paces out on the pan stood a figure. At its feet lay a humped shape. Bodden squinted and said, Hebrick, the one standing. Felicin thought, and the other one? Dead or alive? And who? They walked side by side toward Hebrick, who now watched them. His clothing, too, had burned away to little more than charred rags, yet his flesh beneath that skein of tattooing was unmarred. As they neared, Hebrick gestured toward his own bald pate. He grinned and said, Suits you, Bodden. In a caustic tone, Felicin said, What? Are you two a brotherhood now?
Yes, they're a Malazan Brotherhood.
Oh.
There we go. Sorry.
Okay. So it should probably be mentioned that both you and I shave our heads.
Yes, we are shaved heads. Yes, we are shaved heads.
Now, there is not a requirement to shave your head to be in the Malazan Brotherhood.
There is not.
I'll just throw that out there. But
we accept all kinds of follically challenged people. But yes, the current membership is led by some follically challenged gentlemen, shall we say.
The figure at Hebrick's feet was the mage Culp. Her gaze fell to him, and she said, Dead. Hebrick said, Not quite. He'll live, but he hit something going over the side. Felicin said, Awaken him then. I don't plan on waiting in this heat just so he can get some beauty sleep. We're in a desert again, old man, in case you hadn't noticed. And desert means thirst, not to mention the fact that we're without food or anything like supplies. And finally, we've no idea where we are. Hebrick said, On the mainland, 7 cities. She asked, How do you know that? Hebrick shrugged and said, I know. Culp groaned, then sat upright, one hand gingerly probing a lump above his left eye. He looked around, and his expression soured. Felicin said, The 7th Army's camped just over yonder. For a moment, Culp looked credulous. Then he gave a weary smile and said, Funny, lass. He climbed to his feet and scanned the horizon on all sides before tilting his head back and sniffing the air. Mainland, he pronounced. Felicin asked, Why didn't all that white hair burn off? You're not even singed. Hebrick said, That dragon's warren. What was it? Culp said, Damned if I know. Chaos, maybe a storm of it between warrens. I don't know. Never seen anything like it before, though that don't mean much. I'm no ascendant, after all. Felicin muttered, I'll say. Culp squinted at her and then said, Those pocks on your face are fading. This time it was Felicin who was startled. Bodden grunted. She whirled on him and demanded, What's so funny? Bodden said, I saw that, only it don't make you any prettier. Hebrick said, Enough of this. It's midday, meaning it'll get hotter before it gets cooler. We need somewhere to shelter. Culp asked, Any sign of the Marines? Felicin said, They're dead. They went below decks. Only the ship was on fire. Dead. Fewer mouths to feed. Culp took the lead. He aimed for the far ridge of hills. The others followed without comment. 20 minutes later, Culp paused and said, We'd better pick up our pace. I smell a storm coming. Felicin snorted, All I smell is rank sweat. You're standing too close, Bodden. Go away. Hebrick muttered, I'm sure he would if he could. A moment later, he looked up in surprise, as if he had not intended to voice aloud that thought. His toad-like face twisted in dismay. Felicin waited to regain control of her breathing, then she swung to face the thug. Bodden's small eyes revealed nothing. Culp slowly nodded and said, Bodyguard. His voice was cold as he addressed Hebrick. He said, Out with it. I want to know who our companion is, and where his loyalties lie. I let it slide before, because Gessler and his soldiers were on hand, but not now. This girl has a bodyguard. Why? Right now. I can't see anyone caring a whit for a cruel-hearted creature like this one, meaning this loyalty's been bought. Who is she, Heberick? I love how Culp's calling it how it is.
Absolutely love that. I love how he just checked her right there. I would like to have seen her reaction to that because he doesn't say it, but I guarantee you she had a kind of sad looking face there.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah, because I don't think...
She probably is just enraged, so she's just mad already anyway.
Well, part of me feels like that, but this is one of those things. It's like you are with three men who would happily leave you in this desert. She might realize it with that little statement when he pointed out that you're a cruel-hearted one, and what he's revealed there, which we'll learn a little bit more, but it's kind of like, I'm curious if she took any of that to heart. Probably not.
No, because in a couple sentences, she's like, well, just leave me then.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think she's getting emotional.
Yeah.
It's not a logical argument that they're having. Heberick grimaced and said, Tavora's sister, mage. Culp blinked. He asked, Tavora, the adjunct? Then what in Hood's name was she doing in a mining pit? Felicin said, she sent me there. You're right, no loyalty involved. I was just one more in Unta's cull. Clearly shaken, Culp spun to Bodden and asked, you're a claw, aren't you? The air around Culp seemed to glitter. Felicin realized he'd opened his warren. Culp bared his teeth and said, the adjunct's remorse in the flesh. Heberick said, not a claw. Culp asked, then what? Heberick said, that'll take a history lesson to explain. Culp said, start talking. Heberick said, an old rivalry. Dancer and Surly. Dancer created a covert arm for military campaigns. In keeping with the imperial symbol of the demon hand gripping a sphere, he called them his talons. Surly used that model in creating the claw. The talons were external, outside the empire, but the claw were internal, a secret police, a network of spies and assassins.
It's kind of like the CIA and the FBI. One's internal, one's external.
So the CIA in this case would be the talon, and the FBI would be
the claw.
The claw.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a funny way of looking at it.
The NSA also on the internal one, right?
With a little KGB thrown in for good luck.
We're going to stop. We're not going to go down this road.
Right.
No more comparisons or anything. We're just going to leave it.
Move along, sir.
Culp said, but the claw are used in covert military operations. Heberick said, they are now. When Surly became regent in the absence of Kellanved and Dancer, she sent her claws after the talons. The betrayal started subtly, a string of disastrous botched missions, but someone got careless and gave the game away. The two locked daggers and fought it out to the bitter end. Culp said, and the claw won. Heberick nodded and continued. Surly becomes Lysine. Lysine becomes Empress. The claws sit atop the pile of skulls like well-fed crows. The talons went the way of Dancer, dead and gone. Or, as a few mused now and then, so far underground as to seem extinct. Heberick grinned and said, like Dancer himself, maybe. Felicin studied Bodden. She thought, Talon. What's my sister got to do with some secret sect of revivalists still clinging to the memory of the Emperor and Dancer? Why not use a claw, unless she needed to work outside anyone else's knowledge? Heberick said, it was too bitter to contemplate from the very start, throwing her younger sister into shackles like any other common victim. An example proclaiming her loyalty to the Empress. Felicin said, not just hers, House Perrin. Our brother's a renegade with one arm on Genabacchus. It made us vulnerable. Heberick stared at Bodden as he said, it all went wrong. She wasn't meant to stay long in Skullcup, was she? Bodden shook his head and said, can't pull out a person who don't want to go. He shrugged as if those words were enough and he would say nothing more on that subject. And that is quite the dose of truth for Felicin right there, isn't it?
If she'll listen to it, that's a big dose of truth. I'm glad he finally said something. Get tired of him not saying. I like that he says that. That's good.
Yes. Oh, he's kind of forced to. Heberick said, so the talons remain. Then who commands you? Bodden said, no one. I was born into it. There's a handful left, kicking around here and there, either old or drooling or both. A few first sons inherited the secret. Dancer's not dead. He ascended, alongside Kellanved. My father was there to see it, in Malaz City, the night of the Shadow Moon. Culp snorted, but Heberick slowly nodded. Heberick said, I got close in my suppositions, too close for Lysine, as it turned out. She suspects or knows outright, doesn't she? Bodden shrugged and said, I'll ask next time we chat. Felicin announced, my need for a bodyguard is ended. Get out of my sight, Bodden. Take my sister's concern through Hood's gates. Heberick said, lass. Felicin said, "Shut up, Hebrick. I will try to kill you, Bodden, every chance I get. You'll have to kill me to save your own skin. Go away, now." Bodden surprised her again. He made no appeal to the others, but simply turned away, taking a route at right angles to the one that they had been traveling. Felicin thought, that's it. He's leaving, out of my life, without a single word. She stared after him and wondered at the twisting in her heart. I want to circle back to some things I've said in the past. For the life of me, I can't understand what Tavora said or did to get Bodden to have this much loyalty to her and Felicin.
You know, the only thing that comes to mind is prescience of what's coming. I know that she can command respect. So whatever she did impressed him enough, I'm assuming, or she's getting him doing something to protect his family during this mess or something, maybe. I don't know. Whatever it's done, it's, she's got his respect. I'm talking about the adjunct, as who I'm referring to.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the beginning of the book. He had to go through the cull.
Mm-hmm.
His ear got chopped off. Bricks being flung at his head. He had to protect Felicin through all that.
Yeah.
Okay. They get to Skull Cup. That is not a pleasant experience either. The ship on the way there.
Yeah.
This is a big deal to have to go through.
It's a huge deal.
And then to top all that off, while they're in Skull Cup, Felicin, the way she starts acting, specifically acting towards Bodden and Hebrick, I just don't see what the motivation was on his side.
Yeah.
What could Tavora have given him to make him give her his word that he's going to go through this for her?
And that's a good question, but whatever it is, I think it speaks volumes to Tavora to be able to command this kind of loyalty, for a guy to go through that kind of torture just to be the bodyguard to her little sister through all this. It just has to be loyalty. She has done something to earn this guy's loyalty in such a way that it's got a guy this loyalty to put up with a hateful shrew that you're trying to save, and is going to try and kill you while you're trying to save her.
Yeah, I forgot about the part where she tried to kill him.
Yeah.
Forgot to add that part.
Right. But I am like you. I wish I could know why he stays, because like I said, that's the only thing I can come up with is loyalty, because money goes so far, but he could have taken the money and run, even if it was an hour and a half in delivery of the sister. In my opinion, it's just strictly loyalty to Tavora for some reason. And I don't think we're ever rewarded with an answer.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't think of it. I can.
Maybe we overlooked it. It might be some small detail.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm curious.
Or maybe it's one of those things that's left unsaid. I can't see it being money, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it can't be money. I don't think it would be money, because like I said, the situation with a guy like that, let's just say he takes the money and it's a half now and a half later. It's like, well, I'll take the half now and leave. I'm still rich and I ain't got to do the job. But he stayed and went through all that for that. That speaks of loyalty to Tavora to me.
The fact that he stayed after Felicin didn't want to leave.
Yeah. And think about it like this. I just now thought about this, is it could also have something to do with Dancer and the Talon. The fact that maybe there's a chance for him to think that he's going to get before the Empress one day and take her out as well. I have no idea. Because he said, I'll ask her when I see her, kind of deal. Maybe he had a plan too.
I guess we'll find out when we find out, if we find out.
Right.
I could add it to the list of questions for Mr. Erikson too.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of those things that is just better left an enigma.
And I think that's a lot of it right there. Some things aren't meant to be found out.
Because it builds on the mystique of Tavora.
Yes.
What did she do?
I'm trying to ask this question as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Hebrick snarled, "Damn you, Felicin. We need him more than he needs us." Culp spoke. "I have a mind to join him and drag you with me, Hebrick. Leave this foul witch to herself, and Hood take her with my blessings." Culp is on fire today.
Yes, he is, and I love him. He's dropped some great ones there. I forgot what he said about Togg's. It was Togg's feet, I guess. But we have not had much ascendant swearing here. I've enjoyed Culp for bringing that back.
Yeah, it hasn't been that creative lately.
No.
We need some more Marines around,
Is it Malazan blasphemy? Is it swearing? I'm not sure what it is, but it's great, man. I love it.
Felicin said, "Go ahead." This is what I was talking about earlier, where she's just, leave me here by myself in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Culp ignored her. He said, "I took on the responsibility of saving your skin, Hebrick, and I'll stick to it because Duiker asked me. It's your call now." Hebrick hugged himself, then said, "I owe her my life." Felicin sneered, "Thought you'd forgotten that." Hebrick shook his head. Culp sighed, "All right. I suspect Bodden will do better without us in any case. Let's get going before I melt. And maybe you can explain to me your comment about Downstairs still being alive, Hebrick? That's a very intriguing idea."
The thought you'd forgotten that remark about her Hebrick being saved. It's like, yeah, you saved their life once, or maybe kept it, but for the most part, they've been protecting you since day one. They've protected you 1,000 times over more than you've ever done anything for them. So what she did for them was owed to them. So she can think about it like that, but she owed it to them.
I think in this particular case, she's referring to when he was pulling those rock carts,
Yes.
that he was going to die.
That's what I'm.
So that's the one thing.
I agree. That's other than that one. That's the one thing that she's done that was decent that we've seen.
Felicity shut their words away as she walked. She thought, "This changes nothing, dear sister. Your cherished agent murdered my lover, the only person in Skullcup who gave a damn about me. I was Bodden's assignment, nothing more. And worse, he was incompetent, a bumbling, thick-skulled fool, carrying around his father's secret sigil. How pathetic. I will find you, Tavora, there in my river of blood. That I promise."
You obey.
Man, she's turned Bennett into a saint in her mind.
Yeah. Last time she saw him, he beat the stuffing out of her.
Right. Broke her jaw, didn't he?
Yeah. If not,
no. So he beat her, and then she went back to him after he broke her jaw that one time. She went back to him, and then he was drugging her very heavily, and then he was kind of disgusted with her at that point, right?
Yes.
Felicity heard the word sorcery. The word jarred her into awareness. She looked over at Culp. The mage had quickened his step, his face pale. Felicity asked, "What did you say?" Culp said, "I said that storm rolling up behind us isn't natural. That's what I said." She glanced back. A bruised wall of sand cut the valley down its length. The hills she and Bodden had left earlier had vanished. The wall rolled toward them like a leviathan. At her side, Hebert gasped, "Time to run, I think. If we can reach the hills." Culp shouted, "I know where we are. Raraku. That's the whirlwind." Ahead, 200 or more paces away, rose the ragged, rock-strewn slopes of the hills. Deep defiles cut between each lump, like the imprint of vast ribs. The three of them ran, knowing that they would not make it in time. The wind that struck their back howled like a thing demented. A moment later, the sand engulfed them. We're going to stop here this week. We will pick up the chapter where we left off next week. For standout moments, I enjoyed watching Culp desperately trying to find a way to get them out of Curled Emerald, the warren that was flooded, and his crazy idea to fool reality that manifested. That was really interesting.
It's very interesting. And this is what, like I said, this starts really making me really love Culp a lot more. But I think that's also one of the more in-depth interactions we've had between a magic user and using his warren. So it's kind of nice catching that insight into their magic use there.
I'm trying to think of the only other two examples I can really think of that are similar to this is when Tattersail went for the sealing spell that she had on Night Chill's remains. That was a little bit of this.
Yes.
Didn't get a lot, just a little bit of it. And then Quick Ben going through the back door into the Warren of Shadow.
Yes.
That was more of that type of the games that they can play, the little adjustments they can make instead of just casting a spell.
Manipulations, yeah. Really like that.
On that point, I did enjoy learning more about the rules of magic in the universe, specifically when Culp was talking about if you're on land, you're probably going to end up on land.
Right.
Same thing with air, water.
Yes, that's very necessary. I think it's good info, and I agree with you.
When Culp called for the Ascendants to help him, he's like, "I don't believe in you, but you need to believe in me." That was funny. But them helping him seal that wound, that was really cool.
Yes, and I like how they used him to save their realm there. That's what I'm assuming happened there. So I like how they just kind of reached in to use it because he made himself available to be used. Very interesting.
The variation in the description of the undead dragon as compared to Rake, Solana, or any of the other dragons that we've been introduced to so far was another thing that I enjoyed.
Yes, and he mentioned the fact that it was more, what did he say, more raw, more primal. I think it's kind of mentioned in that, which would lean to an elder slant on that. But this is, I forgot to mention this at the time, but this is a true core memory, that undead dragon just kind of disdainfully flying through this realm, kind of seeing you, thinking about you. And then, of course, was it Gessler waving? Gessler waving at that thing. Oh, that's just always funny.
This is going to sound like a weird analogy, but it is a core memory for me as well. That image with the Solanda following behind it on this river of something.
Yes.
I kind of have a picture like Rainbow Road in Mario Kart. You ever play Mario?
Yes.
Mario Kart?
Yes.
Yes. It's not flashy like that, but I don't know. It just feels like that a little bit. There's no edges to it, right? You can fall right off, and it just feels really dangerous.
I agree. I totally agree. Oh, goodness.
Probably the first time that comparison's ever been made.
Yeah, I think probably so. I'm hoping so.
My crazy mind.
Hey, it means we're still keeping it original.
Finally, that history lesson
Mhm.
about the Talon and their history with Dancer, and then the war they had with the Claw. So cool.
Yes. And that's because we've been hinting at it for so long. We've been wanting them to say it. Just say it. Say he's a Talon forever. We've been wanting to say that for the past 3 weeks. It's like, he's a Talon.
Yes.
Just say it. It's out in the open.
It was nice to get that all out in the open.
Yes.
Finding out that Tavora had tasked Bodden with protecting her. I mean, that's a revelation in and of itself right there.
It is.
But then that added element of what are the Talon, what were their capabilities, all that kind of stuff.
And even down to the fact that you can't rescue what don't want to be rescued is another interesting bit of info drop there on Felicin.
All right, great job tonight, Billy.
Hey, great episode, man. I really enjoyed it.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Just a great episode, as always. I really like that. It just keeps growing. How does Erikson continue with the escalation? And we know he does. We know from having read this before. I know it just keeps going. It doesn't ever slow down, I don't think.
He's got an endless dial that he can continue to turn up.
Yes. And then we got to add a new word thanks to the Horse Frogopedia. So we have a Culpian to be added to the Horse Frog wordpedia. Horse Frogopedia?
Yes. A Culpian demeanor.
Yes. I like it. You have a Culpian demeanor today, sir. I like it.
I hope I'm portraying myself as more positive than the negative Nancy that Culp is always.
Culp is our Moriarty of the bunch, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.